This segment brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Welcome back to Farm Factor. Connie Owen, Director of the Kansas Water Office, gives us an update on water around the state.
My name is Connie Owen, and I am the Director of the Kansas Water Office. Prior to this position, I had a career and still have a career as a water rights lawyer, which I've done for a few decades. And my work has primarily focused on the Water Appropriation Act, which is the use of water in Kansas, which involves who gets to use it, how much. There's a state regulatory agency, the Division of Water Resources, within the Department of Agriculture that regulates that. And I'm on contract with them to conduct administrative hearings when they need those done. So I've been involved with water issues for a very long time. And a short time ago, I became the chair of the Kansas Water Authority, which is a governor's appointed position. And that position is the head of a statewide advisory board that works in connection with the agency I now work for. So the Kansas Water Office is the state's primary overarching policy, planning, and coordination office, all things water, whether it's surface water, groundwater, water quality, water supply. And we coordinate with all the state agencies because they do the implementation work and they have a lot of important roles that fold into managing the water resources. So for example, as I mentioned, the Division of Water Resources is in charge of permitting. So they are in charge of who gets to use water, how much, for what. And the Kansas Department of Health and Environment is in charge of water quality. So they do the regulating to protect the quality of the waters in our surface waters and our groundwater. The biggest concerns that we are all facing statewide can be categorized basically into three different groups. And one is groundwater supply, which is primarily the Ogallala Aquifer, which is an underground water source that underlies most of western Kansas and some of central Kansas. It supplies water to all of western Kansas. There just isn't much in the way of surface water, but the economy of western Kansas has developed around and relies on the groundwater supplies coming from the Ogallala Aquifer. The second major category of water issues in the state is the supply of surface water. And that has to do with our reservoirs. We have 14 federal reservoirs in the state of Kansas, and they are all experiencing sedimentation problems. What that means is that as sediment flows into the reservoirs from the streams that feed them, it drops, as the waters flow in, it drops sediment in the reservoirs. That fills up the reservoir over time, shrinking the capacity of the reservoir to store water. So not only does a reservoir then have a problem providing enough water for the people and communities that rely on it for their drinking water and their municipalities and every single use of water, that capacity shrinks. And another related problem to that, which at times could be even worse, is it reduces the ability of the reservoirs to help us prepare for flooding. So if we do not have enough capacity in our reservoirs, basically if the bathtub gets too small, then we cannot store the water when there's a major flood. And the flood just becomes worse and does more damage. When there is a drought, we hope to have enough capacity in our reservoirs to have stored water to help respond when there's a drought and when water supplies are low. So we have groundwater supply issues with the Ogallala Aquifer. We have surface water supply issues with our reservoirs.
We'll have more with Connie Owen when we come back on Farm Factor.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com. This segment brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Welcome back to Farm Factor. We're back with Connie Owen with the Kansas Water Office.
The other category is water quality, and there are water quality issues that impact both groundwater and surface water. And some of the quality issues that impact groundwater involve salt contamination. There's an area of central Kansas around the Burton area that has some very serious chloride contamination from old oil and gas operations. And there are other groundwater contamination spots throughout the state. And as I said, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment is actively engaged in helping to address those and study those. We also have water quality issues with surface water. And a primary issue in that regard is the nutrient runoff into our lakes. So nutrients, fertilizers that are being used upstream from reservoirs flush down into the reservoirs, and they contribute to toxic algae blooms. They're actually called harmful algal blooms, HABs, and they are a very serious problem in all of our reservoirs, some more serious than others. Milford Lake in north central Kansas is one of the most severe areas where we have to deal with these algae blooms. And the Kansas Soybean Commission is one of many partners involved in a project to address that, where there are efforts made to help people implement best management practices upstream from the reservoirs so that we do not have the kind of nutrient runoff and fertilizer runoff and soil erosion that contributes to the contamination of Milford Lake. Unfortunately, we have these algae blooms in various parts of the state where the lakes are actually shut down in whole or in part. And Milford has had a number of examples, I think, since 2011. Every year there has been at least part of Milford Lake that's had to have been shut off. So we're very pleased and grateful to the Kansas Soybean Commission for being one of our partners in dealing with this really severe problem. Getting back to the idea of the groundwater supplies that are shrinking and surface water supplies that are shrinking, we are very pleased that the Kansas Soybean Commission can report numbers where they are using reduced groundwater. And if I have my numbers right from the Kansas Soybean Commission website, the soybean farmers reduced their water use by 34%, and they have increased their no-till acres by 41%. And in the process of doing that, they've also increased their yields by 93%. So the soybean farmers are proving that using the proper practices and the proper technology, you can improve your yields, have good economic outcomes, and use less water. That's something that we need to advance and encourage, and we're very impressed and very pleased that the soybean community is leading in that regard.
When we return, meet this week's young leader in ag, Nikki Kirchhoff.